In 1999, when my blue truck had about 120,000 miles, a wrecked truck came through the auction with the same engine just a little over 30,000 miles. I bought it and jerked the engine and trended and sold the Hulk to the wrecking yard. About a year later, cousin David asked me if I had a transmission that would fit in a Chevy truck for one that he was fixing. I gave him the transmission. I kept the motor wrapped up because I was sure the motor, my old blue would go at any time. I was storing it at the tow company for a few years. When the mechanics began to be replaced, I had to save it a few times from being taken and tossed. So finally, a couple of years later, I brought it home, stored in my yard. By this time, Luke was half owner in Old Blue and had spent much time on desert roads at high speeds. I believe it spent about as much time aloft as wheels down. He started complaining that now it had 187,000 miles. The motor was getting tired, and it was time to put the new motor in. I asked how much oil it used between changes. He said, none. Susan's second cousin lives in our ward and rebuilds motors for fun and profit. Occasionally, I help him get a rebuildable motor when he needs one. I can usually find an extremely cheap one for the needy people he helps. I asked him if he could take Luke under his wing as an apprentice. Also, he would help Luke change out the motor and trade for the rebuildable core. He said, sure, send him down. Luke took the motor down to his house and garage one evening to begin. The cousin asked how much oil the motor burnt and why did he want to change it out. When Luke told him he thought it was tired but burnt no oil, he persuaded him to change the spark plug wires and rotors to see if that helped. Suddenly, Old Blue was back to full power, jumping brush poppers again. The extra motor was stored for future use in the garage. Meanwhile, Luke was called occasionally to help with other projects. Another year and a half and 15,000 miles went by where Old Blue had to get a replacement exhaust system. How could that be? And a rebuilt front end. It seemed a huge rock jumped out in front of there one night and bent the A-arm bracket connection. Also, during this time, various huge dents grew in the fenders and doors. These were roughly fixed and Old Blue became partly primer gray. Finally, the day came where the water seemed to be disappearing from the cooling system. A new radiator and fresh hoses didn't solve the problem. It got so bad the 5 gallons Luke carried wasn't enough to get him anywhere before it boiled. The old girl had finally almost hit 200,000 hard miles, and an engine transplant was in order. Luckily, we had a donor motor in stasis. During the replacement, the transmission was also rebuilt. The builder was amazed at the worn conditions of all the gears and clutches. At last, the job was complete. Now, who would have the courage to drive the patient on her maiden journey, perhaps to Logandale? Well, as you know, I was elected. This was the night I went out to Logandale to help Adele persuade Dad to go see a doctor. Luckily, that job was done before I got there, and I was just able to have a good visit. About 9 or 9:30, I reluctantly took my leave and headed out. I was starving because they had eaten before I arrived, and I had come straight from work. When I started the pickup and turned the lights, I found I had no tail lights or dash lights. The dash lights weren't too important because they had neglected the hood and to hook the speedometer back up anyway. But I was afraid I would get a ticket without tail lights. Since I was going to Wally's for a burrito, I figured I'd just change the fuse and solve the problem. After arriving, I found a burrito that looked good. I put it in the microwave and asked the clerk where she kept her flashlight so I could look under the dash at the fuses. I was informed there were no flashlights. I asked about fuses and told, oh yeah, it's right back there. I went back to the fuse section and saw some thick candles. A light bulb went on and I could use the old candle for the flashlight method to determine which fuse to replace. I bought the burrito and the package of candles and got a book of matches for my project. After eating the burrito, I tried to light a candle. The wind was blowing so hard I wished I had a bushel to hide under. Don't hide your candle under a bushel, light under a bushel. I shut the car door, rolled up the window, and finally lit the candle. Then when I opened the door to slip my slender frame under the steering wheel and a dash, the wind blew it out. I tried a few more times, burning myself with hot wax during my gyrations. I then turned the truck around and faced the wind so the doors would help deflect the wind rather than direct it into the cab. After a few more tries, which resulted in burned fingers, I was able to wiggle in position to spot the burnt fuse. Alas, I couldn't see a thing. I needed my spectacles. Although I was a spectacle myself by this time, I once more extricated myself from another dash by falling unceremoniously onto the rough asphalt parking lot. After pulling my glasses out of my pocket, the routine started once again. At last, success. I could finally make out which fuse was the dash tail light. By candlelight, it looked fine. I checked it and felt once more out on the ground, all the while balancing the candle, and fell out on the ground, all the while balancing the candle, the fuse and all. I suppose I would have gotten less burnt if I had snuffed the candle before exiting the cab. When I took the fuse back in store, I noticed they seemed to be wrapping it up. I had my phone in my hand since it had fallen out of the holster during my exercises. When I approached the fuse section, I realized once more the glasses. I set the phone down and pulled out my spectacles. To my dismay, I discovered fuses for only pre-70 model cars. Who said Logandale is not a progressive community? They are already onto the car restoration craze spreading across the country. Oh well, perhaps I could remove a fuse from a non-essential system like the gas radio or the heater and put it into the taillight spot. Again, with the windy method of candlelighting, go outside, drop to the ground, put on the glasses, and crawl back in the cab, belly up, to accomplish the task. After changing the fuses around, I hopefully started the car and turned on the lights. Voila, the headlights still work. No luck with taillights or dash, but the last time I did the trick with the candle to wiggle the connection to the fuse box, but to no avail. I set off for jolly old Henderson without taillights. A few times when I passed by policemen, I just had to brake a bit until I was out of sight. When I crested the hill going into the Vegas Valley, I was amazed as usual by the bright light display. It even seemed as if the glow came into the cab, and I could see plainly the speedometer wasn't working. Wait, the dash lights had come on, and the taillights with them. Oh, fabulous day, Callooh Calais, I chortled in my joy. Old Blue had seen the light and wanted to add her contribution, front and back. As I arrived at home and unpacked the candles to put them away, I found only my phone holster. No phone. Uh-oh. Had I dropped it in the parking lot and left it in the store? Oh well, tomorrow I would call the store to inquire. The next day I tried directory assistance. After several wrong numbers, I called Dad and asked him to look it up for me so I could call. He insisted, even in his pain-riddled state, on going down there in person to ask for it. He said eye to eye was a much better way to communicate. I finally relented. He said when he went in the store and started to ask about the phone, the clerks all said excitedly, "Oh, here it is. Please take it out of here. It has been buzzing and ringing all morning, driving us crazy." They never asked for proof of ownership at all. They just wanted to be free of its bother. Funny thing, I was going through withdrawal pains without it.